It is that time, my friend. And you might be saying, Keith, what time is it? It's time to take the skills that we've been building and learning regarding IP DHCP snooping and apply it to the production network. So let's go meet with Bob. We'll take a look at the topology, what he has in mind. We'll make a plan, we'll implement it, and verify it together. Let's begin. So it's a Tuesday morning. We walk into Bob's office, we exchange greetings, we say hello, and then we settle down and he shares with us the topology for the production network, which is this bad boy right here. And we ask him, okay, Bob, what do you want us to do regarding DHCP snooping? Where do you want it? And he says this, well, I've got a little work to do and it's all down here in Florida. We made a decision, says Bob, that instead of doing a DHCP relay on this interface and then sending the DHCP request up to a corporate server in Arizona, instead we just want this router, router 3, to act as a DHCP server to support VLAN 30. So VLAN 30 is this bad boy right here, 10.16.20.0 with the 24-bit mask. And Bob also indicates that router 3 is already directly connected to VLAN 30 and that subnet. So all we need to do is add DHCP services on there. But to help protect the Florida network from rogue DHCP servers, he would like us to configure DHCP snooping on this Florida switch to support VLAN 30 so that no unauthorized DHCP servers can just plug in and start offering IP addresses in who knows what subnet. In addition, because the DHCP server is directly connected to this network, Bob would like us to disable option 82 insertion for DHCP snooping. No problem. We did that in the previous video. We'll do it again here with the command no IP DHCP snooping information option. Then he'd like us to test it by going to this Florida PC, making it a DHCP client and verifying that it gets an IP address, and also going back to the switch to make sure we can look at the DHCP snooping information to verify that the switch has learned that IP address that this client's using along with its MAC address. Now, one thing that we definitely want to do is once we configure DHCP snooping, we want to specify that interface 3/3 is a trusted port because the DHCP server is off of that port. So in our troubleshooting, if the client is unable to get an IP address, either we didn't disable option 82 or we didn't make port 33 a trusted port. Either way, we'd want to make sure we check both of those elements and get full functionality from the Florida PC in getting a valid IP address and being able to communicate on the network. And because this is a virtual lab, you can click on the link. If you're logged on to CBT Nuggets, click on the link for the virtual lab, and let's walk through this together. So here on DC Nug, our management PC, let's open up MT Putty, upper left-hand corner, and we'll open up connections to, we'll need router 3 in Florida, and we'll also need the Florida switch, FL switch, great, and also PC1 in Florida. So we'll have those 3 tabs open. So let's start on the router and let's set up DHCP services. So to do that, we'll go into configuration mode, IP DHCP pool, and let's go ahead and call this our pool for DHCP. And the network, let's take a look at the plan again. So we're supporting VLAN 30, which is this network right here in Florida, 10.16.20.0. And this router is going to be .7. So I'm going to put a little .7 there. And we can set up ourselves, the router, as the default gateway at 10.16.20.7. So our pool will be 10.16.20 with a 24-bit mask. And we can also do excluded IP addresses if we want to. So back at the CLI, our network statement is going to be for the 10.16.20.0. We'll do a space /24, enter. And then for the default gateway, it's going to be the router itself at 10. You know what we should do? We should verify that this router has the IP address of .7. Always verify on new gear, verify what the current status is before we start making changes. So we'll do a do show IP interface brief, enter. So sure enough, here on the subinterface .30, we have the IP address of 10.16.20.7. So that is the appropriate address to hand out as a default gateway. So we'll use the command default-router and then that IP address, which I will just copy paste, making sure I don't do a typo. There we go, enter. And if we want to do a DNS server, we can hand out maybe Google, or if we have an internal one, we can hand out that as well and press enter. Great, and then we'll do exit. And let's also set up the first maybe 10 IP addresses as exclusions. So we'll do an IP DHCP excluded address, and then we'll do 10.16.20.1 as the first in the range, and we'll go through 10.16.20. Let's go through 10. So it won't hand those out. And let's do a show IP DHCP, and let's just go ahead and use the word pool. and that'll show us our pool. So fantastic. There's our range for the network, and we've also got 10 IP addresses that are excluded, which is .1 through .10. Great, so that's the router. Let's go over to the switch and set up DHCP snooping. So here on the switch, we'll do a show IP DHCP snooping, just to verify what we're starting with. The snooping is disabled by default, and it's not configured for any VLAN, so we are good to go. So we'll go into configuration mode, IP DHCP snooping. We'll enable the feature. Next, we'll hit the up arrow key, enable it for VLAN 1, enter. And let's do a do show IP DHCP snooping. And so currently it's enabled. It's enabled for VLAN 1, and the insertion of option 82 is enabled. Let's fix that as well with a no IP DHCP snooping information option. Press enter, and we'll hit the up arrow key a couple times and do the show IP DHCP snooping again, just to verify that it is not inserting option 82. Great. Okay, so we've got the DHCP services set up on R3. We've got DHCP snooping set up on the Florida switch. But what we don't have yet is we don't have set up this port 3/3 identified as a trusted port that will allow the DHCP services to do offers and acknowledgments and server type messages back into the network. So let's also specify interface 3/3 on the switch as a DHCP snooping trusted port. So back on the Florida switch, we'll go into interface gig 3/3. And also we should do this. How do we know, for reals, that gig 3/3 on the switch really is connecting over to the router? How do we know? We're not physically there. Most of the work we do is in the cloud or in data centers. How do we know? And one answer is CDP. Because they're both Cisco devices, we can do a show CDP neighbor and just verify that it's the router hanging off 3/3 to make sure we're on the right port. Let's go take a look. So if we do a do show CDP neighbors, and sure enough, off the local interface gig 3/3, there's the R3 router right there. So still in interface configuration mode for gig 3/3. And it's a good option, by the way. If you're not sure which interface you're in, you can always just go interface gig 3/3 again and confirm you're in the right place. And so here we want to do an IP DHCP snooping question mark trust. Boom, just like that. Then we'll do a show IP DHCP snooping. And this confirms all the details that we looked at earlier, in addition to the fact that port 3/3 is a trusted port from a DHCP snooping perspective, meaning R3 or the DHCP server off of that port can go ahead and respond. So in a moment, we'll go to the Florida PC, we'll turn up DHCP client services and verify that it works. But I also want to point out in the bigger picture that if we had this switch configured with DHCP snooping, and if our DHCP services were down here somewhere, we would definitely want to configure on this access layer switch port 0/1 and 0/2 as trusted ports. Otherwise, when DHCP servers try to respond with offers and other things, those responses will not be allowed into the switch if these two ports are not trusted. So that's a key element. So whether the port is a trunk port or an access port, if it leads towards the legitimate authorized DHCP server, that port needs to be a DHCP snooping trusted port. All right, so here on the switch, we've done our work. Let's go to our client. So this is the Florida PC. If we do a show IP, this is just a virtual PC. So show IP will show the IP address. So it's currently 10.16.20.30, and the default gateway is 10.16.20.7. But if we configure it to be a DHCP client, we would do this: IP space DHCP and press enter. And one of the cool things about this, it shows us the DORA process. So it sent 2 discover packets, it looks like. Then they got an offer from the server. Then it had a request and the final acknowledgement, and check that out, it got an IP address. And the reason that worked was because we have DHCP services set up, and DHCP snooping is not prohibiting that server from responding to us. And we can go back to the switch, and let's do that now. And let's do a show IP DHCP snooping, and we'll tag on, let's tag on binding, and that'll show us what DHCP snooping has learned from its snooping. And I was literally expecting to see the entry there for the DHCP client. Let's do this. Let's do show IP DHCP snooping just to make sure everything's set. So it's enabled. Great. Oh. I'm so embarrassed. So in our previous exercise, we had enabled DHCP snooping for VLAN 1, and so I carried that forward here. So yeah, it's enabled on VLAN 1, but this client is in VLAN 30. So what we also need to do is enable this for VLAN 30. So that's the benefit of checking our work. So config T, IP, DHCP, snooping, And we want to do VLAN 30. Boom, just like that. I'm glad we checked. And we'll do a show IP, DHCP snooping, and verify. There we go. So we got VLAN 1, which we don't really care about too much, and VLAN 30, which is where our client is. So now let's go back to our client. So let's give it an IP address again. We'll go back to static IP, and then I'm just going to copy paste this bad boy right here. Boom. Just for a moment. And then we'll do a IP DHCP again to be a DHCP client. It's going to go through the DORA process, discover offer request acknowledgement, and survey says, boom, got 11. Now, if DHCP snooping is working and we configured it correctly, we should have an entry. If we do a show IP DHCP snooping binding, that should show that IP address that was just given to the PC along with its associated layer 2 address. And that should show up on the switch that's doing DHCP snooping for VLAN 30. Let's take a look. So back at the switch, we'll go ahead and hit the up arrow key a few times and do a show IP DHCP snooping binding. Press enter. So here's the IP address that was handed out via DHCP. There's the corresponding layer 2 address. The way it got into the table was via DHCP snooping. It was on VLAN 30, and it was learned on gig 0/1. That's where this client, PC1, is connected to on this switch. And in this video, we've had the opportunity to take our skills and knowledge regarding how DHCP snooping works, to apply it to our production network, and then also to verify it. And as part of the verification process, we identified that I had put in the wrong VLAN, and as a result, there was no entry in the binding table for DHCP snooping. That's why it's always a great idea to, when we configure something, verify it, make sure it works. And if it didn't come out like we thought, investigate the root causes and correct those, which we did. So I've had a lot of fun in this. Now, at the end of each of these sets of videos and each of these skills, my intention is we apply these skills to a production environment. If you've done this with me, if you've done it in an emulator, a simulator, on your own, physical gear, or in the labs, I would like you to give yourself 10 more points. And the goal being, let's get 100 points to represent growth and building skills and having fun and becoming more valuable to ourselves and our families and our employers as we become better and better in working with IP networks. So I've had a blast in this set of videos, and I look forward to seeing you in the next. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.